The next thing is the tech crackdown. We were talking about tech and the crosshairs yesterday with that bill kind of brought up by Democrats. Well, now, now we're seeing, and this may have always been the case, but bipartisan support. So, and that's kind of always been the theme. Republicans and Democrats both saying tech is too big for one reason or the other. So there's about 5 bills currently in the works, all listing things, that have to do with basically all centered around platforms as monopolies, breaking them up, making sure they're not too big, they don't have too much of a competitive advantage. For instance, like breaking up Amazon into two companies, where Amazon would be, its service of platform would be one company, and then its product lines, the things that it makes, or specific private label brands that it has, would be a separate business. They wouldn't be in the same business. They would be spread them out to increase competitiveness by making them two entities instead of one giant entity, right? So
So you're
those are some of the
saying
things.
like the same thing that happened with Google.
Similar, yeah, so very, very similar. And I think the fear is that because you also have Amazon is buying MGM Studios, they're moving into the movie business. They've got like exclusive rights to one of the nights of football. Jeff Bezos is about to blast off into space. And remember, this guy owned a failing physical bookstore, and now he's flying in space. So you don't get that way without being very, very aggressive and taking advantage of your strength. But they're also moving into telehealth. Amazon Care, as it's called, it's got a couple of clients, and a couple of big businesses are starting to get hop into that. So they're spreading into every industry. So I do understand in a way what they're getting at here, and tech is valued differently than retail. So some of the problem that they're going to have passing these things is, well, normally antitrust, anti-monopolies are really focused on the consumer. So if the competition, if a company has a monopoly, right, it can control prices, and if the price control hurts consumers, that's usually a clear case for, okay, you're too strong, you're too big, we have to break you up because consumers are being hurt. But in this case, you're not necessarily hurting consumers, but it really depends on how you define hurting consumers. Maybe the prices are reasonable and people are happy, but what about the ability to move your data and own the tech that you buy, right? What about the ability to move between products and share services as opposed to being stuck with one set of products or one group of products, right? Using one service primarily as your go-to for everything. Does that make it anti-competitive for other companies that want to break into that space? As well as the questions of people like Amazon who own the physical infrastructure of the internet. When they took Parler offline, and however you feel about that, you still have to recognize that Amazon made that decision. They took an entire platform out of existence because they didn't like it, right? And since they have so much infrastructure on the internet, both software and hardware, it gives these companies power over information, power over the existence of things on the internet that they don't necessarily need to have votes or laws for. They can say, we own it, we allow things to exist, so we can take things away. So I definitely understand. And plus the censorship, Facebook censorship, that's a whole thing coming down, and whether or not they're allowed to, they have a whole panel of people that decides whether things you do should be banned. I have my friends who've been banned multiple times from Facebook, 30-day bans, 30-day bans. So they're acting like their own kind of judgment system, like a thought police, which is really not what they were made for. So people question that as well. Like, are they getting too strong? Because that's what we use to get all our information and to communicate. So are they inserting themselves much more heavily into that world, but not as just like an innocent bystander in a service, but as a regulator, right, having the power to govern. So,
Yeah, I'm really happy that the government was saying, Facebook, you're not allowed to put a cryptocurrency or a currency on your platform, because then that would just give them way too much power.
right, because the thing about tech, they expand and they say, oh, this is all part of our wheelhouse, because they don't sell products right the same way. So you're not buying up businesses and taking over, but they can still gain competitive that make it hard to compete with them in general. Such as, we'll sell cryptocurrency too. We'll become a broker dealer. You know what I mean? We'll just literally be your one-stop shop for everything.
And if they're able to ban people, and they could ban people off their site for just saying something incorrectly, then that would mean they're banned from their marketplace, which is just not a free marketplace.
No, that's such a good point. You do not want your social media handling your money, and then them deciding when you have access to it or not, restricting access or not. Oh man, that just sounds like a rabbit hole in itself.
Yeah, technology is a double-edged is a kind of like a double-edged sword. On one hand, it has brought us some of the greatest advancements of all time, but on the other hand, it seemingly removes freedom, right? It constricts us because we create a dependency on it, and then it's basically put all your eggs in one basket. Then that basket's controlled company. They're, oh, listen, you do a lot of stuff here, but if we don't like you, we can take it away. You bought that laptop or that phone, but it's not really yours. The technology, the IP, that's ours. So you can't mess with that. Yeah, but I paid $1,000 for it. Yeah, but it's ours. You know what I mean? It's this is
treading a fine line.
Yeah, and there's going to be questions about if the government can do this, and they're going to have to pass the House and Senate, and they're going to have to vote on it. So we got a ways to go for all this. Plus, I imagine the tech companies aren't just going to say, yeah, this is great, we'll accept your ruling. I bet they'll fight it. They have the money, they have the capital. So I don't think it's going to be an adverse material effect right now. But this is something that, especially if you have big exposure to tech, or you look tech and invest in tech, it's something you're going to want to watch. You can in the FANG stocks, and they come after FANG stocks. That might hurt those businesses, or might cause you to have to make changes to your portfolio to accommodate. So,
oh, good to know. It definitely sounds like a topic that we're going to be coming back to, especially the more it merges and government tries to take a hold of tech companies, which right now tech companies are power in it, and I think the government is utilizing them in such a way that allows tech companies to kind of bend the rules.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, because I think that when you normally look at companies and how monopolies work, you're generally talking about companies who own physical assets, you're talking about companies that have business storefronts. Technology is not the same way, and it doesn't grow and expand the same way. It's not exactly a linear comparison. So, there may need to be different interpretations and more flexibility with how we view the powers of government. But at the same time, people are concerned that, if the government can make decisions about what's too competitive without it having to hurt consumers, you change the definitions of what monopolies are, then it gives more precedent for the government to be able to say, we can be big government, we can have more power. And some people don't like big government, right? People don't want the government to have more power, more flexibility in what they can and can't do. So
guys, where does the majority of the money that Amazon brings in, where does it come from? Their data.
Oh yeah. They bring in
from
most
their
these
data.
companies. If you use a service and it's free or it's cheap, you're the service.
Oh yeah, and I've heard of a company wanting to do business with Amazon, and Amazon said, well, we want to have your device always listening in and getting data from your customers and then giving it to us. And they said, no, we don't want to do that. Amazon said, okay, we won't do business with you then.
Right. There's a book called The Walmart Effect that talks about, because Walmart did this. They had these facilities where people would come to sell their products. They put them in chairs that were bolted to the ground and rooms that had bad lighting and they were uncomfortable. And what they would do is they would do this to psychologically make them uncomfortable, so they would be more likely to make a deal more quickly. And Walmart would say, listen, we're going to basically buy your product at cost or just above cost. They're like, that's the margins are too small for me. I can't keep producing that. And it's like, that's too bad. If you want exposure to this big market where there's the majority of people shopping and you want that exposure, you're going to pay for it. Some people went out of business. Some people did it and went out of business because they just couldn't be. And Walmart was like, we're going to squeeze you because good luck doing it on your own. We're the big guys. And I do understand there might be a fear of that with Amazon as well, because Amazon just overtook, either is about to or did overtake Walmart as the biggest retailer in America. So
that doesn't even get into the point of if someone comes with an idea and they just say to themselves, hey, can R&D remake this?
Right. They that's the thing about tech too. They're like, okay, we like it, but we have all this time to analyze your products and we can find a way around your patents so that we're not technically legally liable. And then we can make an alternative version that's not yours, but just as good. And then we don't need you anymore. And then they make an IP on that, and then you're like, well, shit. What do I do now? That's a big thing about intellectual property as well.
That's why you need to make everyone sign an NDA before you show them any of your stuff to these big companies. Non-disclosure agreements, people.
That's right.
Yep. All right, I think that's
protect your IP.